time. We're putting in some clarification on structuring. And we're going to meet again on Wednesday the 31st at 3 p.m. For another special session for city manager discussion. So now back in open session. Next on the agenda is we're going to go back discuss the mayor-council form of government. And the purpose of this discussion is to get some information on what the process is, and no action will be taken. So, start, Laura Ross, could you go over just the highlights on how we would go about
Yes, happy to. So
what the process is?
Basically, if you're changing the form of government, it has to be done either by a resolution of the board or by a petition submitted by residents of the city. And if the petition route is the way to go, there will be a petition committee. It will be formed externally. The resolution is just that. It's like every other resolution that we would do, but it does need to set forth the proposal that would go on the general election ballot. So it would basically say something to the effect of, are you in favor of the proposal entitled Changing the City of Frankfort Form of Government to the Mayor-Council Plan, or something along those lines. And then in the general election, the citizens would vote, majority of voters, if they were to vote yes. We then have 2 years to come into compliance with the laws for the mayor-council plan. At the next general election, and I know there's a lot of talk of elections, we would need to make sure enough additional legislative body members were elected to support the mayor-council form of government, which by law, you have to have 6 to 12 council members. So that would have to occur at the next regular election after the one this year. Then we would need to work through our ordinances and make the applicable changes, because it is a very different structure of government. So that's the basic process. I will say this, the resolution or petition, whichever were to take place, maybe both would have to be filed with the county clerk by the second Tuesday in August.
Which is August the 8th.
Is that what that is?
I looked it up last night when I
Okay.
That's a good start. Any discussion on this, Commissioner Thompson?
Mayor, I have passed out to everyone some information. City Solicitor Ross, I have included a number of the statutes, 120 being the one you just spoke of. Under the mayor-council form of government, the number of individuals on the council or commission, or however we will call it at that point, would have to at least be 6. The mayor being some people call it a strong mayor form of government. The mayor would not vote unless there was a tie. So while he may set the agenda, he or she may set the agenda, they would not be a vote. I have proposed, if you'll look in your packets that I've handed you, actually a 2-part change to the form of government, with the first one occurring on November the 7th, 2023, and that being that under that first one we would abandon the city manager form of government. I will say that as a part of that, and for the people who are watching, that there are only 19 out of the 435 cities in the state in the Commonwealth of Kentucky that utilize the city manager form of government. Some of them are very similar in size, and some of them are not. Some have been successful, some have not, and I think there may be a will for this. We shall see, and that we would reorganize under 130. 120 requires the procedure for the referendum. 83A 130 discusses the mayor-council plan, and that will show you all each what happens there. And then this would have to be a ballot initiative, so it would have to be 50% plus 1 vote of the votes to determine if this is something that the people of Frankfort want to happen. This would essentially remove the city manager aspect of city government it would put the mayor as the chief executive officer of the city for the day-to-day operations. Obviously, that would mean that as a full-time job, there would be a pay differential as opposed to the massive amounts that you're making right now, Mayor. And then if you'll notice underneath the the change in form of government permitted by popular vote under 83A 160, I have actually drafted a resolution already. Not to, I'm not stepping on Laura's heels at all or toes at all. I'm just trying to be helpful in here, and that it has all of the documentation and all of the wording I believe that have been used in other communities in the Commonwealth, and I discussed this with the county clerk and how things would have to go down, and so that information is here. We would have to have this done by August the 8th so that it can be on the November the 7th docket. Mm-hmm. Moving to the second issue, the fact that we have to have 6 on the board, and because county government works a little different than we do, as a more representative aspect of the county, I have proposed a second step in the change of government to where there would be 6 wards or 6 districts being represented by 6 elected council members. Essentially, this would be representative areas throughout the city. You will see I have actually proposed for each of you, you can see what a breakdown of that would look like. And then there is a map on the last page. Zach, I'm happy to provide these to you as well later if you want to put them up. There's a map as well, and it actually breaks down each of the areas as well, so there's some sense in there. I would actually propose that we have a hybrid model, which is allowed under KRS 83A 100, which allows for representative districts, and I would propose 6 of those, obviously, with 2 at-large council members. Those at-large council members would run citywide, and they would obviously have to campaign citywide. A little bit more would go into that, but this would be more representative, I think, of the city. I think there has been discussions in the past that perhaps east side or downtown or different areas are represented on a regular basis. This would put an end to that, and I think this is would fall more in line with what the county has, and allow for us to deal with constituents in our general area and answer directly to them. I think that there is a need for that in this day and age. And so I've included all of these along with all of the statutes that would have to happen. We could not do this until November of 2024 because you have to do it 240 days before the general election to propose that. So it would have to be sometime in March or April before that would happen. But in doing so, we could essentially fall within that 2-year plan that is required because in 25 then, even though we'd be in that plan, we would only elect those additional individuals on there, and then once all of our terms were up, or whoever happens to be after the 24 election, then the 26 election would be the first election that would elect everyone under that new proposal. And if we're discussing this, I think that having a phased-in approach of changing city government all at once would be something to look at. So that would be my proposal. I'm happy to provide these to online so people can see them as well. I'll also say, Mayor, that the other form of government that is used almost as much as the mayor-council form of government is the commission form of government, where essentially you have 6 to 12 commissioners who are full-time. A lot of office space we'd need here. And under that proposal, instead of having the mayor or a city manager in charge of the day-to-day operations, the commissioners are actually in charge, and they are actually granted oversight of individualized departments. And that is also obviously an option out there. I don't think that's the one that has been proposed by anyone that any of us have talked to, but that is out there. And to be transparent to everyone, that's the other form of government in Kentucky that's allowed.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much.
Any discussion or questions about this? We're just considering what the options are right now. Yes, Commissioner. Walker?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, you know, when we received the letter of resignation, I think I sent out an email stating that we do need to discuss the city management overall. Are we moving in the right direction for a city manager? Is it time for us to discuss? Commissioner Thompson and I, we've had several conversations in regarding to this in detail. So I'm not opposed. I'm actually in agreement that maybe it's something we do need to take in consideration. I know this is a special meeting and there are those that are allowed to be present in the community, but I think before we're moving forward in that, I think that we need to have a public meeting also and allowing our community to have a say-so. We've gone through many city managers. We've gone through, you know, it's ups and downs. There's different things that's been said on why city managers leave. And I think it's time to get our community involved, allow them a public meeting with us to discuss how they would like to see this going, or their thoughts of city manager, or their thoughts of their government. We represent them, and I just want to make sure before we start pulling different things and doing that we do include and allow a public meeting for our community to have a say. But like I said, Commissioner Thompson and I, we've had detailed conversation in this for a while, not just over the past little bit, but for a while since we've served together, and I've spoken with different people in the community in regarding to this. I don't think that it's a bad idea. I think it's something that we need to discuss. As shared earlier from Ms. Maxwell, you know, we were a mayor form of government at one time, and now, you know, then we went here. So I don't think in regards to all the paperwork and things, I think we can pull some of that and see how it worked then, and maybe why we went to a city manager, and that way we know what our history has been, so we know where we're going. And I just think it's a big thing to involve our community right now as a public meeting.
1956, I think.
It was in the 60s, I understand, but I don't have any actual paperwork
Okay.
on it. It was
Okay.
on the ballot in the 60s,
Okay.
and it got voted, obviously, to change to city manager form of government.
And all we would be doing, we don't make this decision. All we
Correct.
do
That's
is
correct.
we pass a
Correct.
resolution, and that's our question. And then the community will vote on it. So
Yes.
they're gonna have the
Yeah,
most
it has to be
input.
on the ballot.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yep.
they're gonna have a lot of input. They get to decide. So, but my question is on Ross. Sorry. Is that, so all we have to do is the resolution?
Yes,
And then that gets filed?
and that
We
gets
don't need
filed.
it, then that takes care of the petition.
That's
part.
right.
So-
Then there is no need for a community petition, although they certainly could circulate.
But if we didn't do a resolution, the community could put this on the ballot themselves.
That is exactly right.
And that would take 20% of the votes cast in the last.
In the last
They have to
presidential
get that many
election.
signatures?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And they do have to be either a business, an individual resident, either a resident of Frankfort or a business that has a physical location in Frankfort to sign the petition.
I think that's, yes.
I just want to add, you know, I know sort of what you said, and I think we're saying sort of the same thing, but I just want to be clear. The community, they do have a voice when they vote. I just want the community to have a voice before it gets on the ballot, because then we're forcing them to vote on something. I would like for them to have a say before it goes on the ballot and before we move it that way, for them to discuss and understand. Several people, you know, they do follow our politics, they do follow our meetings, and they may know what's going on, but I don't want a lot of our community to be sidelined and not understand, and then when they get in there to vote, what is this? And just voting for things. I want people to be confident in their city, confident in their management of their city, that is representing them and that is leading the city, and so they need to understand all details before that goes on the ballot. That's what I was saying. So I think we're sort of saying the same thing, but.
Yeah, Commissioner Thompson?
From a planning standpoint, when are we voting on the budget?
That would be the first reading in June, at the June work session,
And
which
this-
is the 12th.
And then the second reading would be on the,
The regular meeting, right? 20-something?
Is it 28th or something?
theoretically, if we've already had the first reading, there wouldn't have to be many it would be very
Right.
quick, right?
Right,
Could-
that's right.
Could we plan a discussion, a community discussion that night if people want to come to discuss?
The June
that?
work or?
June work session.
June work
voting?
session.
I was thinking the June voting meeting
June voting
because,
meeting.
because.
It's the
the-
26th.
Well,
No.
we'll see where it fits.
Well, yeah, the only
Yeah.
reason I say that is because the first one, because of the budget, it may be a little bit longer, maybe a little bit hairier, and I thought if the second one, we get through voting rather quickly on the budget, that may open up some other things, but I know we have a ton of other things to discuss on that night, so, even if we have to have a special meeting one night, I know we've got a
We'd
lot of
have-
meetings, but.
But you have to do a first and second reading on this, the resolutions.
No.
No,
it's
just
just
one
resolutions. so,
One, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
could, I think we've got the time, if that's all we have to do
Yeah.
is the resolution, and then we have the August 8th.
I just want to make sure that, I wanted it in June to give Solicitor Ross the opportunity that if there are any, because if we tender something, the clerk can send it back to
Yes.
us, and I want to make sure that we're not filing it on August 1st, and, you
That
know.
is absolutely true. It has to be properly filed, and if, considering that we haven't done this, we want to make
Right.
sure that we are,
Mhm.
we have a little time in case
Yeah.
we need it.
All right.
Any other discussion on this one?
Good info.
Okay, we'll move on to the next topic, which is the discussion of the process for hiring a new city manager. And so this is just, I guess we could use the last time we did this as a baseline, and if anyone has any suggested changes in terms of the timing.
If we decide, because this is obviously, we're not gonna hire, a full-time person in the next, couple weeks, but if we do get into negotiations and we're discussing the City of Frankfort job description, could we possibly, discuss the fact that we may go through this change and that their role either may be eliminated or changed to a city administrator role? And I think that's important that's discussed, and, because I don't want to put anyone on surprise, and that may make people not want to, or may want them to be a part of it, so I
think it will affect who applies.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I guess for me, when I stayed at city management, and I also asked for the job description to be placed back on there, and that was because all of our conversations has been leading up to, in our budget, that we need an assistant city manager. It's been said over and over and over, and there was no job description that was really given. And so when I say city management and I want to look at this job description, it's something where we can look to see, whether or not we're going to go possibly do a resolution for the mayor form of government, or if we're going to stay with the city manager, this is the time that we need to discuss on what we want our city manager to actually do and their duties, and if we're going to entertain an assistant city manager. This would be the time to do that, instead of saying that you're getting hired on for 13 reports and then you complain about them, and then you want to take half of those reports and send them on to an assistant city manager. For me, I just want to say, if we're going to, depending on which way we go, whether or not a resolution or not, this would be a good time for us to discuss on whether or not we do a different form here of moving forward, instead of just hiring a city manager as soon as possible. Is it something we need to entertain, to hire a city manager and give them the duties, and then when that person comes in to be part of the hiring process, to hire an assistant city manager? And we've looked at their salaries appropriately and what we want them to do, whether that's economic development, communication specialists, and all that wrapped in. I think this is our time to look at that and discuss that moving forward, so we can not have to sort of be hitting balls back and forth, I guess. That was my reason for bringing up the job descriptions and city management as a whole.
And what about the timeline on this? It depends on who we put as the interim, I suppose.
I do not want to, rush into this, and I don't want this to be a 14-day, everybody get it in as fast as you can. I think we've, done that in the past. I would suggest a 90-day period, just for due diligence. I think last time we had an interim for 8-ish months, around 8 months. So it's not unheard of, especially with this group, to have an interim for a little bit. I would ask that the process, be around a 90-day period, so that we can adjust this a little bit, quite possibly. Also put some language in there about potential things that come in. The one thing that I'll notice that's in here, it does say under the general direction of the city commission. I think this needs to be more clear with regard to the way the statute reads, and that the city manager reports to the city commission. That individual is hired and reviewed and all of those things. I think it needs to be made clear. I was taken aback by some statements that were made, and so I think that needs to be much more clear in there. But I would propose a 90-day.
And I'm not sure I don't think we need to vote on any of that today. It's kind of let's get regrouping on where we are. So 90 days from today, you would want to have hired a new one?
90 days between now, I would like to at least be in the interviewing portion, because at that point, we will have already, if we go the route of having a resolution on the ballot, we can for sure say this is a potential possibility.
Yeah.
If it gets pulled, then that's something.
So, one quick question. So, if this ballot initiative, if we do this, the ballot initiative is successful, when would we be mayor council? 2025, January 1st?
It's up to us. It would go into effect upon the election of the additional council members that were needed, officially, but then we still have another year to
2 years.
get it together
So-
to be in full compliance.
So whoever does apply, potentially they have at least a year, maybe two, or.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is.
I just want to take in consideration, like, the 90-day period for us to be able to start interviewing, I'm fine with. However, I definitely want it stated that this is an open position until filled and it's rolling, so we do not skip over any resumes as we may have been before, that people came in after that deadline. So I would like that to be a rolling submission. So if something happens and we do interviews and maybe they're not as what we were wanting, then we can continue on. So I would like that to be rolling to make sure anyone that does submit an application, it will be submitted. However, when we start our interview process, that will be known when we start our interview process, but it's always rolling in case other people apply. And that way, no applications will get looked over, or people will feel like that they got it in, but maybe they didn't, so.
Do we want to hire? Okay, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead and I'll.
You go ahead, Commissioner Unger, you go.
I just wanted to make a statement that, I'm supportive of not rushing into this, and I think the 90-day period sounds good. We do have a lot to discuss with this potential resolution to change a form of government. So, it's a lot to take in, and we do need to hear from our community. I would also like to say that before we start an interview process, I would like to talk about what we could do as a BOC to make sure we are putting our phones away or not distracted, and also what is and is not appropriate during a closed
That's
session.
not part of the process for hiring a city.
Sorry.
We can bring that up in
Yeah.
a normal meeting.
No, but
Right.
interview. I'm just saying
During
during an
interviews.
interview process, I feel like we need to talk about what
Okay.
putting it out there.
Gotcha.
And I would just agree, I guess I would just piggyback on, and we also need to make sure that there's not emails or that there's not votes going into this. We all need to be open and making sure that there's no rolling 3-count votes
I agree.
done before we start this process, in regardless. So if we're gonna be open from cell phones and everything else, we need to be open across the board. And we need everyone to have an open mind going into this. We need the best city manager. I'm not here to be everyone's friend, it's what this community needs. And I need everyone to look at this as, this is important, and this is on us once again, and we need to make a good decision. And if the resume does not speak that they are not a great city manager for this city, we need to be able to say that regardless of who's pushing a candidate or not. That's why I want this to be a very open process so we can get the best candidate, because it's almost like Kentucky State. We're in a do or die right now. And our community is really tired of continuing to change leadership and seeing us do the management that we're allowing in our community. And it's time for a strong city manager. We have tons of projects going on, and it's just time for our community to thrive. And we need to get a city manager in here that can do that and can lead our wonderful staff. Our staff has been diligent in keeping the city moving forward, and they deserve a good city manager and a good BOC that has their back to keep the morale up and to keep our city moving forward.
Do we have any interest in outside search firm, or is it premature to talk about that? Do we want to hire an outside firm to help, or do we want to do this internally, like we did that last time?
I don't know.
I'm not opposed to an outside firm. Again, I don't want to keep spending our city's money. I can definitely say that. But if we had an outside firm, it just goes back to transparency and making sure that the outside firm has the control of doing this and that they're not swayed by political genre in this, and that we would make sure that it's done appropriately. So I'm not opposed to it. Because it may need to be a far stretch. I don't know how far we need to stretch.
I actually like the idea of an outside firm.
That's something we can
I'm open to
consider.
that.
So, for the time being, we're gonna regroup on Wednesday at 3 to discuss the interim city
Mhm.
manager. Do we have any other discussion on the hiring process right now?
I'd just like an update at some point about when we can have that discussion of the,
Mayor Council.
with the city input on the change, when we can put that on the
The mayor council?
mayor council, or whichever we.
Mhm.
Um,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now adjourned. See you Wednesday.